Bonjour tout le monde. Bon après-midi. Hi everyone. Bonjour, bonjour. Bonjour, messieurs.
Tout le monde est de bonne humeur.
Il faut.
Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à cette conférence de presse.
Hello all, welcome to this press conference.
Donc avec nous aujourd'hui, Chrystia Freeland, ministre des Finances, le ministre du Logement, Sean Fraser, le ministre de l'Innovation, François Champagne, et la présidente du Conseil du Trésor, Anita Anand. Tout le monde va faire une petite allocution dans cet ordre-là. So we have 20 minutes for the comments, and after that 20 minutes for the questions. Since it's pretty busy, if you can all keep it short and sweet, it would be great. Minister.
OK, merci.
Thank you.
OK, merci beaucoup. On a
Thank you very
beaucoup à
much.
annoncer
We have much to
aujourd'hui.
announce this morning.
Alors, pour cette raison,
For that reason, let us get started.
good afternoon. Our government is relentlessly focused on delivering for Canadians, on building more homes faster, on stabilizing prices, and on creating great careers. And that's what we are here today to discuss. Earlier this year, our government introduced the new tax-free First Home Savings Account. The tax-free First Home Savings Account allows Canadians to contribute up to $40,000 towards the purchase of their first home. That money is tax-free going in, and it's tax-free when it is withdrawn to contribute to that first down payment. Since we introduced the tax-free First Home Savings Account in April, it has already started to be offered by most of Canada's major financial institutions. And I have an announcement about it today. I'm thrilled to announce that more than 150,000 Canadians have already opened their tax-free First Home Savings Account. And many more accounts are being opened every day. This is really phenomenal take-up. It shows that hundreds of thousands of Canadians believe that they can buy their first home, and they're saving to do just that. We also know that there is a shortage of homes for these 150,000 Canadians putting money away in a first home savings account, and for those who continue to open accounts. And that's why we are aggressively rolling out agreements with municipalities using the $400 billion National Housing Accelerator Fund, which was announced in Budget 2022. We already have deals with London, and as you know, the Prime Minister announced a deal in Vaughan today that Sean has been working so hard on. These agreements are supporting municipalities that are committed to changing their zoning rules so we can get more homes built faster. That's what Canada needs to do. And that is what our Housing Accelerator Fund is doing. We also know that rental apartments are essential in a Canada where everyone has a great place to call home. And we know we also need to build more rental units faster. That's why last week we announced that we were unlocking an additional $20 billion in new financing to build up to 30,000 additional rental units per year. And last month, I introduced the Affordable Housing and Groceries Act, our government's first piece of legislation this fall, which will remove the GST on the construction of new apartment buildings so we can get more rental units built faster. La semaine dernière, j'ai annoncé que nous avions débloqué 20 milliards de dollars de nouveaux fonds pour bâtir jusqu'à 30 000 appartements destinés à l'allocation de plus par année. Et le mois dernier, j'ai déposé la loi sur le logement et l'épicerie à prix abordable, le premier projet de loi de notre gouvernement cet automne, qui permettra d'éliminer la TPS sur la construction de nouveaux immeubles d'appartements pour bâtir plus de logements destinés à la location.
So that more units for rental are built.
We're eager
quicker.
to get this legislation passed as quickly as possible so that more shovels can get in the ground. Today, Bill C-56 is being debated for the fifth time. I'd like to call today on the Conservative leader to end the procedural delays, allow us to get this legislation passed. Canadians need more homes to be built faster. This legislation will do that. This legislation also introduces important changes to the Competition Act, which will help in the work of stabilizing prices. There's really no excuse for delaying this legislation, and I hope all parties will join us in passing it. Today, we'll also be launching consultations on a further lowering of the criminal rate of interest. We cracked down on predatory lending in our spring budget by lowering the criminal rate of interest from 47% to 35%. Today, we're going further. This is about making sure that predatory lenders can't trap the most vulnerable Canadians in a spiral of debt. And today, my colleague, François-Philippe, will be announcing next steps to stabilize grocery prices for Canadians, as we promised we would do. Notre gouvernement se concentre à obtenir des
Our
résultats
government
pour les
is
Canadiens
focused
et
on
Canadiennes.
delivering results for
L'annonce
Canadians.
d'aujourd'hui, les annonces d'aujourd'hui,
Today's
s'agit
announcements
des autres exemples de notre plan
are
en action. And I'll now
more
pass it
examples
over
of our
to
action plan.
Excellent. Merci, Chrystia. Merci tout le monde pour être
Thank you,
ici.
Chrystia,
I
and thank you,
just want to start by saying over the last number of weeks, you'll have seen a number of measures that we've rolled out to help address the national housing crisis that we're living through. If we're going to solve the national housing crisis, we need to tackle the very specific problems that underlie it. One of those challenges is really focused on the way that cities build homes, or in some instances don't build homes. There's too many communities across the country that actually make it illegal to build the kinds of homes that are going to help us get where we need to be. In particular, the need to build more densely, not just near transit stations, but across communities. Today, we've got very good news. The Prime Minister announced earlier a $59 million contribution to the City of Vaughan to the Housing Accelerator Fund. The way that we got here was through working closely with Mayor Del Duca and with the council to identify areas where they wanted to take a leadership role, and some areas where we may have been able to encourage them to go even further. The kinds of things that they're actually doing to take advantage of the fund include building out a tremendous number of high-rise density, high-dense buildings within walking distance to transit, including the GO train and subway stations. They're working very hard to streamline the permitting process, to issue permits more quickly, and are implementing all 27 recommendations from the city's 2022 Development Transportation Support report that they had commissioned. They're allowing more missing middle, so to speak, medium density buildings with more family size units, and they're actually going to adopt a new rule through conversations with our office that's going to legalize 4 units as of right everywhere across the city. What's remarkable is the city has indicated they believe that these measures and others that I haven't necessarily covered in detail today is going to unlock up to 44,000 new homes in the city alone. That's over the next 10 years. The Housing Accelerator Fund had an estimated impact when we designed it over the next 3 years or so to unlock 100,000 new homes. It is proving to be more successful than I thought possible even just a few weeks ago when we made the first announcement in the City of London. With a national goal over the next 3 years of 100,000, and seeing the City of Vaughan step out and say they can do more than 40,000 gives me faith that this is going to have a very, very meaningful impact. I should say as well that I do not believe the job is done, but I have a sense of optimism that I didn't have a few months ago. And I have a sense of optimism because the measures that we put forward are starting to show very real promise, not fictional numbers that are dreamed up in a boardroom in Ottawa, but that are being validated by people on the ground. The Housing Accelerator Fund is a great example, and Vaughan is not the only city we've worked with. You'll have seen the work that we've done with the City of London, the City of Calgary. We're working very closely with Halifax and Edmonton and Brampton. And now with the work that's led to the announcement today in Vaughan, we're seeing ambitious cities step up with extraordinary growth plans that they did not have on the books before the Housing Accelerator Fund was actually rolling announcements out. But we know that the Housing Accelerator Fund is not a complete answer to the crisis that we're living through, but we're starting to see the other measures we've advanced take hold as well. After the introduction of the GST measure that we're removing federal taxation on the construction of new apartments, we saw provinces step up. But we saw developers announce projects. Dream Corporation announced 5,000 rentals in Ottawa, Saskatoon, Toronto. We've seen Fitzrovia Real Estate announce 3,000 new units that were going to remain on the shelf. We've seen Tricon Residential announce 1,000 units. We've seen in communities across the country announce that projects that were not going ahead are now going to go ahead. We see the First Home Saving Account have incredible uptake with 150,000 people now signing up. And we see measures like the Canada Mortgage Bond demonstrate through the conversations I've had with players in the sector, indicate that they expect a full uptake of the additional capitalization that we've made available, which will validate the estimate of 30,000 units every year that this measure remains in place. We have a long way to go. But the measures we're introducing are starting to have a very real impact. And today's announcement in Vaughan is a great example of how we can use federal leadership and federal funding to drive change in cities across the country. I'm happy to pass the floor over to my colleague, Francois-Philippe.
Well, that's very impressive. Bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon, everyone. Every day is a good day to fight for Canadians, and today is no different. Canadians are rightfully frustrated with the increase of the price of living. And we've been talking about that for weeks now, especially when it comes to food. We are in solution mode to bring relief to Canadians, and you've seen a number of actions that we've been taking over the last few weeks. Afin de trouver des solutions, j'ai récemment rencontré plusieurs acteurs de l'industrie de l'alimentation, plus particulièrement les PDG des 5 plus grosses chaînes d'épicerie et les grands manufacturiers d'alimentation ici à Ottawa. Tout le monde s'est entendu pour dire qu'il fallait une approche concertée afin de supporter les Canadiens dans ces temps difficiles. Et durant mes rencontres, je leur ai exprimé la frustration de millions de Canadiens et Canadiennes compte tenu de la situation actuelle. Et je peux vous dire que le cri du cœur que j'ai émis au nom des Canadiens et Canadiennes a été entendu.
And passionately on behalf of Canadians, and they heard me, they listened. And now, the tone of our discussions are different. Now, industry key players want to be part of the solution. Today, I'm here to update you on some of the first steps that we're taking to stabilize grocery prices in Canada.
This is just the beginning. No one would suspect or expect that this is the end. This is actually the beginning of a number of actions that we want to take to help stabilize prices in Canada. We will continue to fight every day for Canadians. That's what I do. That's what we all do in order to improve the situation. So first, I have secured initial commitments from the top 5 grocers to take concrete actions to stabilize food prices in Canada. Starting soon, Canadians will be able to see rollout of actions such as discount across a basket of food products, price freezes, and price matching campaigns, to name a few. Because as you would appreciate, I receive plans from different grocers, and obviously we're just naming a few examples of what I've been saying. But these measures will bring a much needed, more competitive marketplace, and the winners of that are obviously Canadians. Because what we want is to set an objective, but the way to achieve it, we obviously want competition to play. And I can tell you, I've been looking at some flyers this morning, and you already see action in terms of different grocers adjusting ahead, obviously, of Thanksgiving. Each grocer has different actions, so it will be up to Canadians to judge them, to benefit from the best offer across the nation. Grocers need to compete to meet the expectation of Canadians across the country. And that's really what you're going to see. I think what we've been able is to provide a catalyst to have a more competitive environment, which will bring benefits to Canadians. En deuxième mesure, nous allons renforcer le bureau de la consommation afin de défendre les intérêts des consommateurs dans le secteur alimentaire. Le bureau surveillera, entre autres, le progrès des engagements pris par les grandes chaînes d'alimentation, ainsi que les mesures prises par d'autres acteurs clés de l'industrie alimentaire, en particulier les manufacturiers internationaux, tant pour leurs pratiques et pour leurs prix. So people will recall that I did not only meet the large grocers, but we meet the international manufacturers. So what I've tasked the Consumers Bureau is to make sure that we would monitor their practices and their prices to make sure that we have more transparency and we can take further action. Le bureau aura pour mission d'enquêter et de découvrir des pratiques qui nuisent aux consommateurs, comme ce qu'on a appelé la réduflation et la déqualiflation. So shrinkflation and dequaliflation are also things that we want the Bureau, the Office of Consumer Affairs, to focus on, because that's going to be a way for us to inform Canadians about where we're seeing in the market. Thirdly, we will continue to call on all players of the industry to establish the Grocery Code of Conduct that will improve fairness and transparency. And I can tell you, when I was speaking to the Federation of Independent Grocers, who represents 6,900 small players in the industry. That's something that they were very keen on, that we continue to push. This is work in progress. It's been going on for a number of months with our partners in the province, but certainly the Code of Conduct is one important aspect in this series of measures we're taking to improve the situation here in Canada. Quatrièmement, nous allons commencer à recueillir des données supplémentaires sur l'ensemble des prix de la chaîne d'approvisionnement des aliments. Nous lancerons ce qu'on appelle le carrefour des données sur les prix des aliments, quelque chose d'assez semblable à ce qu'on voit aux États-Unis qui s'appelle le Food Dollar Survey, pour aider à surveiller les prix des aliments au Canada. Et je peux vous dire, avec plus de transparence dans les prix, les plus petits joueurs seront mieux outillés pour négocier. So many in my consultation have said, ministers, you know, there's an imbalance when you negotiate as a small and medium-sized producer if you want to sell to the big grocery chain in Canada. One of the way that other countries, I've looked at France in particular, the United States, one way to do that is to have more disaggregated data so that in order to, for the smaller players to be able to see how prices are evolving to the supply chain, because we know it's a very complex supply chain. Thousands and thousands of actors. So this is going to be a step forward as well to help the smaller producers to somehow have a bit more of equity in the negotiation when they're negotiating prices with the large grocery chain. Et enfin, nous allons moderniser le cadre législatif de la concurrence en commençant avec ce que vous avez vu dans le projet de loi C-56 que la ministre Freeland a présenté, un projet de loi des plus importants parce qu'il faut se rappeler que quand il y a plus de concurrence, les Canadiens ont plus de choix et des meilleurs prix. Et je voudrais faire écho à l'appel de la vice-première ministre de dire il est grand temps, si nos collègues dans l'opposition veulent faire un pas concret pour aider les Canadiens à stabiliser les prix, évidemment, le projet de loi C-56 fait un grand pas dans cette direction-là. We believe that these initial 5 measures, when you're looking at them together, will help to stabilize food prices in Canada. But we are obviously open to doing more. This is not by any way mission accomplished. This, I would say, is work in progress. We're going to be at that every single day for the next few months. We have been clear, if these measures do not bring relief to Canadians, we're going to monitor closely and we are prepared to take further action. Bottom line, we're going to hold their feet to the fire. And one thing that Canadians can trust us with is that we have their back. We had their back during COVID, we have their back today, and we'll keep fighting for them at every single step of the way. With that, I'll pass to my dear colleague, the President of Treasury Board. Anita?
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I'd like to welcome Leah Taylor-Roy and Ryan Turnbull here, our colleagues. So nice to see you here. Listen, what we are trying to ensure we do as a government and certainly at Treasury Board is to ensure effective management of resources and taxpayer dollars. So what we've been doing is creating additional tools to help managers in their decision-making regarding outsourcing. And today, I am announcing the release of the Manager's Guide, Key Considerations When Procuring Professional Services. And this guide sets out key questions to help managers determine when to contract for professional services versus when to use internal resources. Ce guide établit des questions clés pour aider les gestionnaires à déterminer quand
will help
passer un
managers
contrat pour des
decide
services
when to
professionnels.
contract out for professional services.
The initial step to help decide whether to outsource is for managers to consider specific reasons why external providers are better positioned to deliver the services and to identify key constraints such as timelines and budgetary considerations. If a manager decides to contract for professional services, they then have additional guidelines to help them structure and manage the procurement in a manner that delivers the best value. Ensuite, si un gestionnaire décide de passer un contrat pour un
If a
service
manager
professionnel,
decides to
il y a des
outsource for
lignes
professional
directrices
services,
pour l'aider à
there will be
organiser
guidelines to
et à
guide
gérer
them to manage that,
l'approvisionnement d'une manière
to
qui offre la
manage this
meilleure
outsourcing
valeur
and
possible.
the best way.
They have to identify measures to mitigate risk, such as establishing off-ramps in the contract, unbundling requirements into smaller value and or shorter contracts to allow for diversification in the procurement chain. Il y a aussi des questions afin d'assurer que les gestionnaires
There are also
assument
ways
la
to
responsabilité
ensure
de
that
respecter
managers
les
take
processus,
responsibility
les
for
politiques,
following
les
these
lois,
processes,
les règlements,
the policies,
et les conventions
laws,
collectives.
regulations, and collective
The guide
agreements.
is not exhaustive. Managers will need to refer to the directive on the management on procurement as well as other policies and procedures, so that if they choose to outsource, they do so in a manner that is prudent, that is responsible, and that delivers the best value for taxpayers' dollars. All departments are expected to use these guidelines alongside other relevant resources. And I have written to my colleagues across government today to ensure that these guidelines are distributed widely, respected, and adhered to. I will say that as a former professor, I realize the value that education plays in the system, especially when introducing guidelines such as this. And so TBS, Treasury Board, is working with the Canada School of Public Service to have the principles outlined in the guide included in procurement-related training and development to broaden the reach and to broaden the knowledge about these guidelines across the system. And then finally, to achieve what it is set out to do, this guide is going to be adjusted and reviewed periodically to ensure that it continues to be an effective tool for managers. In other words, there is a sunset provision in the guidelines that will ensure that it is an evergreen document, continually updated and applicable to the circumstances at hand. Thank you very much. Merci.
Thank you, ministers. We have about 20 minutes for questions and a lot of people on the list, so I'll do my best. Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada.
Laurence
Oui,
Martin,
bonjour, Monsieur
Radio-Canada.
Champagne.
Hello,
Vous
Minister
dites
Champagne.
qu'on va voir bientôt des résultats en épicerie.
You said that
Bientôt,
soon
ça
we
veut
will
dire
see
quoi? Quand est-ce que les
results with
Canadiens vont
groceries.
voir des rabais? La
Can
semaine
you
prochaine, dans 2 semaines, dans
tell
3
us what you
semaines?
mean by soon? Will we see lower costs in 2 weeks or 2 weeks? Answer. Well, I'd say that even in the upcoming days or weeks, things will improve. I mentioned that I saw some flyers this morning with prices. I'm following this very closely. Some measures have been suggested by grocers, and we are taking measures as well. So the goal is to stabilize prices. We're working on how. Yes, but when? Answer. Well, even take a look at flyers. There were flyers out this morning, flyers and coupons, offers. Our goal is to set objectives, but we need competition. Competition will ensure that Canadians get more value for their money. I've already seen it this morning in some flyers. There are flyers with prices for Thanksgiving, which is around the corner. So grocers, major grocers are already starting to come out with their prices for Thanksgiving. We
à ce qu'on a vu en
now are
Angleterre chez
comparable
Whitrose, c'est-à-dire que nous, les
to
5
what's
grands
happened in France
sont
and in
ajustement,
England with Whitrose.
le ton a changé au Canada. Je pense qu'il y a un
The tone
catalysme
has
maintenant
really
pour dire,
changed. There's been
ça va
a
créer une
real
pression, je veux dire,
shift now
sur la
with the
concurrence.
major
Et je pense que les
grocers. So
grands
I think
gagnants,
we
c'est
are
les
going
Canadiens
to
et les
increase competition and
Est-ce que vous
Canadians
êtes
will win at the end of the day.
de l'offre des
Question.
épiciers et est-ce que vous
Are
êtes
you
assez
satisfied
satisfait
with
pour
what the
renoncer à
grocers are
imposer
offering?
une taxe sur les profits
And
excédentaires?
will
Vous savez,
you
je
be
suis pas de
taxing
nature à être très
excess profits
satisfait
or
dans la première
answer?
mouture. On n'aurait pas
Well,
eu des
I'm
grands
not
investissements au pays si on
fully
avait été satisfait de la première offre qu'on a
We
reçue.
weren't
Je peux vous le
fully satisfied
garantir
with the
avec la
first
ministre des
offer we
Finances.
got.
On
I
s'est
can
battu.
confirm that, and
Donc,
so can the finance
effectivement,
minister. We
comme
really
je
had
dis,
to
c'est un
fight for
premier
a better
pas, c'est des
offer.
actions
So
initiales.
as I've
On va
said, this
avoir
is a first
aussi,
step. These are
le
really
bureau qu'on a créé qui
initial
va suivre ça de
measures.
façon mensuelle
We're
parce que
creating an
on veut
office
voir
that will
l'évolution
keep an
des
eye on the
différentes
evolution
initiatives qui
of
vont être
these
prises.
initiatives.
Et on n'exclut rien pour le moment. Et effectivement,
And everything's on the table for
c'est un
now.
travail qu'on va continuer
We're willing
de
to
faire
take
parce
any
que
necessary
l'objectif, il est
action.
clair, c'est qu'on
We're
veut
going to
stabiliser les prix.
continue
On voit que
taking
ces
action because
mesures
we want to
initiales
stabilize
vont dans la
prices.
bonne direction.
Now, these
mais on va
initial
continuer de
measures
suivre
are a
ça
step
tous
in
les
the right
mois, puis on
direction,
n'exclut
but we
rien,
will be
évidemment.
following
Pour
this
l'instant,
very
on est au début
closely.
d'un grand processus
Month to
qu'on va
month,
lancer pour
everything's on the
stabiliser
table.
les
We're at the
prix.
beginning of a huge undertaking to stabilize prices.
J'ajouterais
I'd like to
juste
add
que j'ai accompagné
that
François-Philippe à la première
I
réunion
joined
avec
François-Philippe
les
at this first
épiceries, et
meeting
c'était
with
pour
the
démontrer
CEOs
qu'on
of major
est une
grocery
équipe qui travaille
chains.
ensemble,
We're a
mais
team.
aussi pour
We're working
démontrer
together.
que tous les outils de tout le gouvernement.
All of the government's
incluant
tools
les
and
outils
resources
de la ministre
are
des
available, and that
Finances
includes
sont
the
possibles.
resources that the Minister of
C'était le
Finance
message et
has.
c'est la réalité.
So that's the truth, and that's the situation.
Brian Tubblety, National Post.
Yeah, Minister Champagne, when you announced this initiative, the government was talking about tax measures. You say now that the grocers are offering discounts, price freezes, price matching. Those are all things they were doing before this. So what gives you any confidence that we're going to see real change in grocery prices?
Well, I would say two things. First, you see certainly new measures. What I was thinking is that I have 5 plans, so I'm taking examples to be clear, because obviously, you want to maintain the competitive pressure. So I'm not saying one is doing that, the other one is going to do that in the third month or in the fourth month. We want competition because obviously what you're seeing this morning already in the different flyers, you see people are positioning themselves ahead of Thanksgiving. So what I would say to you is that this is an ongoing process. What you will see is an acceleration of a number of things that they are offering. I think you would see a larger scope of things that they were offering, and certainly over a longer period. That's what I've seen. And I compared their plans to what I've seen with Waitrose, with what they did in Carrefour in France. And to be honest, I think it compares well to what you've seen in other jurisdictions with respect to the measures they have been taking to stabilize prices. So the measures you see today are initial actions they're taking. And I think what we've been able to do, if you ask me, the essence of what we've created is certainly a more competitive marketplace. And that's the best way to stabilize prices, because now I can tell you, I've spoken to all the CEOs, they're all watching each other. Who's moving on this, who's moving on that, and we're checking that. And that's why the bureau we're going to be creating is going to be helping to monitor that, because we need people to monitor, not just going on apps to check prices. But I think what we've been doing is pushing towards a more competitive environment. And the best way, look at any jurisdiction, the best way to stabilize prices is more competition. And I think that's what we have created, and we're going to be monitoring. And like we said, nothing is off the table. These are early days, but the direction that I'm seeing is encouraging. And this is not about us. This is about Canadians. They're talking to their 40 million customers who are watching today. 40 million people are probably watching, and they're going to adjust their buying patterns in light of what they see. And that's what we want, because it's going to, if the 40 million of us are putting our collective purchasing power together, things will change. That's what we want to see.
Are those tax measures, though, that you discussed, did you give them clarity on what those are? And I guess when can Canadians actually expect to see real discounts, a real cheaper price here? And are those tax measures still on the table?
So, like I said, we've already seen things this morning. I look at the flyers early, I think it was 6 o'clock, looking at the different flyers. So we see things happening. There's things that are going to be done in the short term, midterm, and long term in the plans that we've seen. But I would say over the next few days and over the next few weeks and over the next few months. So, because that's the competitive pressure that it's there. So people are going to, grocers are going to react to what each other are doing. And what I've seen in the plan, there's some creative thinking there, looking at international best practices. And as you know, when you have 5 of them, they're all going to adjust themselves in light of what they see. And like Minister Freeland and I said, nothing is off the table. This is almost day one, so we want to see results. We want to see outcome. We want to see price stabilization. And we're going to monitor that. That's why we'll have a team of professionals to monitor that in the bureau. And I would say everything is still on the table, and maybe Minister Freeland wants to add to the possible other measures that we're considering. But this is day one of a fight that we're fighting on behalf of Canadians.
Yeah, thank you, François-Philippe. So when Francois-Philippe had the initial meeting with the CEOs of the big grocers after our cabinet retreat, he invited me to join him for the beginning of that meeting. I was glad to do that, and that was a physical demonstration of the reality that there is teamwork on this front. There is a whole of government approach, and no tools are off the table, no measures are off the table, and that very much includes finance measures like tax measures. So that is for sure an option. Francois-Philippe has, I think, been having very constructive, productive conversations, and we are hopeful that those will start delivering results for Canadians. And if they don't, we are not ruling anything out. What I will also say, both he and I have been talking about Bill C-56, and François-Philippe has been absolutely right to emphasize the importance of competition and the importance of the market. We believe in a competitive market. We think that that is what delivers great results for Canadians at the grocery store, and we think we need more competition. Bill C-56 introduces historic changes in Canada's competition law. François-Philippe and his team and our whole government has been working for a long time on that. And I would say, for people who care about the prices Canadians are paying, and I hope that that is all MPs, there is really no excuse for not passing this legislation as quickly as possible.
Émilie Bergeron, la presse canadienne.
Bonjour, une question pour M. Fraser. Le Québec veut que vous arriviez à une entente avec eux sur les 900 millions de dollars d'ici la fin de la semaine prochaine, donc d'ici vendredi de la semaine prochaine. Est-ce que selon ce que vous savez de l'avancement des négociations, est-ce que c'est réaliste comme échéance selon vous?
Is that a realistic timeline in your view?
J'ai vu d'obtenir une entente aussi très vite, mais c'est très important pour moi pour assurer les investissements du gouvernement du Canada, résultat du logement pour le Canadien, incluant au Québec. J'ai quelques conversations avec le ministre Duranceau, j'ai beaucoup de respect pour elle. Je pense que c'est possible pour compléter les discussions très vite. C'est possible vendredi prochaine semaine, c'est possible très proche, mais je pense que c'est un enjeu pour conclure dans des semaines, pas des mois. I hope sincerely we can get to a place where we're going to advance our shared priorities to build more homes for Quebecers and advance measures that are going to change the way that communities allow homes to be built in their communities by working closely together.
Québec semble réticent de son côté à avoir une cible d'un nombre spécifique de logements à être construits. Vous avez déjà expliqué que le fonds d'accélération est basé sur cette cible-là dans les ententes que vous annoncez comme celle d'aujourd'hui. Mais est-ce que dans le cas du Québec, vous êtes prêt à renoncer à cette cible-là que le Québec voit comme une condition?
Would you be able to let go of that condition?
C'est intéressant parce que partout notre pays, dehors Québec, j'ai l'habilité pour engager avec les municipalités directement. Ce n'est pas possible au Québec avec la loi municipalities.
I can't do that in the case of Quebec because they have a law which makes it such that I work with the province. I respect Quebec's jurisdiction in that matter, but it's also important to respect the essence of the housing accelerator fund.
Je respecte la juridiction de la province et aussi fait des investissements qui assuraient il y a des nouveaux logements dans chaque communauté partout notre pays au Québec et au Québec. We're going to continue to work together. I don't sense that we're divided in what we want to achieve. My expectation through my conversations with Minister Duranceau, who's been fabulous to deal with, is that we both want to build as many homes as possible. We're going to work together to come to an agreement where we can make sure the federal investment reaches communities across the province. And we have a little bit of work left to do to finalize the details, but I strongly sense we want the same thing.
Ashley Burke, CBC.
Why, Mr. Minister Champagne, why is it up to grocery stores to determine when these changes are going to come into effect? Why not give them a specific deadline beyond the deadline of Thanksgiving to announce their plans? And also, it is an industry-wide practice, Metro says, to freeze prices between November and February on certain products. So how can you be sure or say that they're doing this because of you?
Yeah, well, the first one is competition. You know, why and when you want competition to play because, you know, we've looked at best practices in different jurisdictions, mainly France and the UK by now. And you're looking at the market practice and what I think is the best way. The Canadian answer is to fix a goal and then to have people outcompete each other. That's what I'm seeing already this morning because I've seen one doing something. We see the other one reacting. So I think you're going to see over the next few days and few weeks because they have a different measures they can put in place in order to stabilize prices, and they'll come at different point of time to react to market conditions, which is right. What's our role in that? I think we've been a catalyst to bring that to the forefront. I can tell you, when I was with Minister Freeland, the tone at the beginning of the meeting was quite different than the tone at the end of the meeting. And I'll put that in a book one day. I can assure you that it was not exactly the same. This is a non-regulated industry. That was the first time that at least the first time, that's what I heard from different experts, that was the first time that you had the 5 CEOs of the grocery stores in Canada in the same room to be listening to federal ministers expressing the frustration of millions of Canadians, which happen to be their consumers, their clients. So it's a good thing that they listen because what we express as frustration is actually the frustration of their clients. Now, the fact is that we represent the public interest. We have the soft power. We called them. They came. And at the end of the journey, we said, okay, you need to come out with plans. We're going to talk also to the large international manufacturer. I talked to Nestle, we had Unilever, we had some of the largest Canadian, Maple Leaf, McCain. So we've done the work. What I'm saying today, this is day one of a process, but if what we have achieved would be a catalyst for more measures, probably faster measures, and long-lasting measures, if you want me to summarize that in what I see today. But again, this is a dynamic process. That's why we're going to have the Office of Consumers Affairs focusing on grocery. This is the first time in Canada where we'll have a team of professionals which are going to be following that, which are going to provide us the market intelligence we need for the Minister and Minister of Finance and I and the Prime Minister to measure that and decide, as we see, are we going in the right direction and what more needs to be done? That's really the frame that we have in mind as we start this process.
And Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, Russia's President Vladimir Putin, he has weighed in on the Yaroslav Hunka incident. And he said that if the former speaker didn't know that Mr. Hunka served in a Nazi unit in the past, that, quote, he's an idiot. What do you think of that?
I have 2 responses. The first is the former speaker made a really big mistake. He took responsibility for that mistake and he resigned. But the second thing I want to say is, that was a terrible mistake. It caused a lot of pain to a lot of Canadians. It was wrong. And he paid the price. We can't change the fact that he made that mistake. We can, though, all of us, decide how effective Vladimir Putin is at weaponizing that mistake. And I would really urge all of us to understand that Russian propaganda is real, that Russia right now, even as we speak, is killing the brave people of Ukraine. And we need to push back very, very hard against everything that Vladimir Putin says and does.
Sandrine Vieira, Le Devoir.
Sandrine Vieira, Le Devoir. I have a question for Mr. Fraser. Premier Legault said this morning that it's not time for a squabble over housing between Quebec and Ottawa. How will you avoid a fight, especially if a deal is not reached in the timeline that Quebec would like? Answer. Well, I'm not looking for a fight. I'm looking for a solution. I'm looking to make progress. It's very important for me to release funding to Quebec so that housing can be built. It's very important for me
avancer des programmes avec des résultats. Ce n'est pas OK pour moi de juste discuter un nouveau programme comme ça. C'est très important. Après l'entente, les communautés obtenir un impact réel pour les personnes qui habitent la communauté, pas tout notre pays. I have no interest in squabbling over anything, but my sense is our priorities are aligned. All of my conversations with officials in Quebec, including Minister Duranceau, have been positive, have been working towards a solution that will result in a real change in the way that communities build homes, and importantly, result in more homes than otherwise would have been built. Anytime we have a national fund that has billions of dollars in it, we owe ourselves an appropriate process to have an agreement that will ensure taxpayers in every province, including Quebec, receive value for the federal money that I've been giving the authority to use to build more homes. I think that we can work together on an ongoing basis and hope to come to a conclusion that satisfies both the federal government and Quebec very quickly.
OK, nous avons le ministre du Québec ici.
Non, mais je dirais même, écoutez, je pense que les dernières semaines, les derniers mois ont démontré que quand on travaille ensemble, c'est possible. Vous avez vu l'investissement privé le plus important de l'histoire du Québec. Moi, j'ai beaucoup de travail de mon collègue, le ministre Fraser, parce qu'honnêtement, je pense que les Québécois, les Québécoises qui nous regardent ont vu quand on travaille ensemble, tout devient possible. Alors, moi, j'ai confiance, il y a énormément de contacts de part et d'autre. Il y a beaucoup de confiance d'établi, il y a beaucoup de choses qui ont été faites.
A lot of trust. We've accomplished a lot.
When I look at what we've accomplished up to now, it gives me a lot of confidence for the future because, as Minister Fraser said, it's in everyone's best interest to have more housing built. And we've announced record investments, historic investments. We need more housing. This is being talked about in McMasterville, où l'usine de Northvolt va être installée.
Donc, where the Northvolt
c'est la même chose du côté de Bécancour,
factory we built, and it's the same in Bécancour. So we're also working on the energy transition. We have been able to make record historic investments in urban areas and other areas. So of course we're going to work with our colleagues in Quebec, as we've always done. We have a great deal between the two governments. In fact, what we've accomplished together is unprecedented, and we will continue to work together because that's what's in the best interest of Quebecers.
Monsieur Champagne, justement,
Mr. Champagne, could you clarify something? Is the grocery rebate off the table? Grocery tax? No, answer no. But as I said, this is day one of our mission. Our goal is to stabilize prices in Canada. Today, we're announcing 5 actions. And this set of 5 actions will make the market more competitive. We know that the best way to stabilize prices in the short, medium, and long term is to increase competition. If you look at other countries, that's how they have succeeded in stabilizing prices. That is, by increasing competition. That's why C-56, well, you know, often we hear the opposition criticize the government's measures. But now the opposition has the opportunity to take real action to help people. C-56 is one of our 5 actions. We are reforming competition. Here's an example. In shopping malls today, this is an example that's relevant for Quebecers. Often in shopping malls, renters have restrictive clauses. So sometimes if you have a big grocer, there's a limit on how many small grocers can be around them in a certain radius. But if we deal with that, that'll already be a step to increase competition because currently now there are big grocers that want to be in grocery stores but can't, and we want to really take action on that. C-56 is going to give us the ability to take action, and if there was a time to help Canadians, it's now. These measures will help us stabilize prices in Canada.
La fin approche, mais il reste beaucoup de questions.
It's almost the end of the press conference, but there are many questions remaining.
Un petit peu plus long. On peut vous demander de prendre une ou deux questions plus.
Could you take a few more questions, Minister?
La fin de la semaine approche.
Okay, it's almost the end of the press conference, and it's almost the end of the week. We will take a few more questions.
Good afternoon, Ministers. Minister Champagne, I just, from the perspective of a consumer, you're talking about flyers like they're a new thing. How is what you are saying not deeply offensive to Canadians who cannot afford the prices they're seeing now? And what you're proposing is plans that the grocery stores already do every winter, and that one professor just told me is business as usual.
So how would you know it's in the plan? Because I'm the only one to have the plans in Canada. No, but I'm saying, no, let's go back. Do you want to go to transcript? I'm saying those are examples of what we see in the plans, because I want the market to compete. I cannot say, I received that from Loblaws, I received that from Metro, I received that from Costco, I received that from Walmart, or Sobeys. What I'm saying is that example, no one is suggesting that Flyers is new. No one is suggesting that. But the question was, when are you going to see impact? Well, I say, when I read what I see, from what I have in my plans or the plans that I've received, I already see things that's in the plan that are being put in action. So people responding to measures that they intend to do. No one is suggesting that Flyers is new, but I would say if you look at the measures that they're looking to take, for example, a basket of discounted goods, the extent of that and the scope of it is more than what we had seen in Canada. But that's going to be for them to compete. And that's why I like the journey we're in, because they're all going to look at each other now. They're all looking and they say, well, if they're doing that, we're going to do this. And that's the competition, because now we have the plan, which is the baseline. But then when each of them is proposing something, what you will see in the market is that, and I've talked to them, they say, well, we're going to react. If they do this, we'll do that. So what we have been able to create in Canada is a competitive pressure that did not exist before. There was a number of tools, and I will say price freeze, but let's wait and see when you see the extent. We're on day one of this journey. You'll see things that I think, what I've seen and what I've read in the plan, did not exist in the Canadian market before. So we're in day one, and I think Canadians will be the judge of that, because it's not about me. It's them going to the market and the different banners, and they'll select where they go on the basis of the prices that are being offered.
You're only promising to bring food prices in line with the increase of general inflation. You're not actually promising to lower inflation or to lower the prices. And economists across the board have already been saying that food prices will come down and that inflation of food prices is expected to come in line with general inflation.
The good thing is the prices are coming down.
So then are you not just trying to take credit for something that's already happening in the market when you're not announcing anything new?
Well,
and the professor is saying that this does not help consumers.
Nothing new. So do you want me to go back to the 5 things? So we said the Bureau of Consumer Affairs is new. I'm sorry, because they report to me, so I tend to know what they do. And this is new. Now that they're going to be focusing, for example, on the plans that we receive and monitor, what's being done. The second thing that we're going to focus on shrinkflation and dequaliflation, as they call it. That's new. We have nobody today in Canada as part of government which was really looking at these things to inform consumers. And the third thing we're going to do is to monitor the price and practice of international manufacturers. We didn't do that before. That is new. And then you're saying the code of conduct is something that was in the making that's going to help. And I would say what we call the data hub, which is mirroring what's being done in the US. This is new. We did not collect that information, I can assure you, because we had to bring Stats Canada and Agriculture Canada to work together to have something similar to what they do in the United States. And if you talk to the Independent, like I did, they said, Minister, thanks that you're doing that, because now you're going to equip us with data that we did not have when we negotiate with the large grocery chains in Canada. This is new, did not exist. So we are doing, like I say, it's a set of measures that together will help stabilize price. The actions of the grocers is one piece of that, but there's many more things that will help us to stabilize prices and offer best value for consumers.
And I just want to add one thing to build on what François-Philippe has said. Marika, you've actually made my day. You've made my Thanksgiving weekend. This is not about us. It is not about claiming credit. This is about Canadians. And I am really glad that, as you said in your question, you're talking to economists who say inflation is going to continue to come down, that prices are going to stabilize.
That's good news.
That is really good news. That is, we are here to talk about our 3 core objectives. One is stabilize prices for Canadians. Second is build more homes faster. Third is fiscal responsibility. And the fact that people are telling you inflation is going to continue to come down, prices are going to stabilize, that's fantastic. I hope it will be your headline.
On dit qu'on a temps pour une dernière question, comme on a beaucoup de plaisir.
We have time for one last question.
Hi, Minister Champagne. So having the government tell an industry what to do with prices isn't normal. I appreciate you want them to compete, but this is an abnormal step to take. So I'm wondering if you think the fact that your government had to come in and threaten tax measures actually suggests that there is a competitive issue in the industry, and if you do think that, what are you going to do about that actual long-term problem? Because
Sure.
you can't step in every day and threaten stuff, right?
No, I appreciate, there's so many hours per day, but people expect us to fight for them. No, you're quite right. And that's why I don't want to repeat myself, but that's why C-56 and the reform we've done in competition, both in budget 2022 and what we're doing today and what we're going to do, is fundamental because, and again, to the question before, look at best practices in the UK and France. We've been studying that very clearly. And actually, I'm looking and I say, I think our answers that we have today is well in line with best practices you see internationally. But the most effective way, to your point, to do that is not about ministers. It's having just more competition, short term, mid-term, long term. That's why C-56 and the reform of competition, of all the measures I think today, of all the measures we have, it's probably the one which is going to be producing long-lasting benefits to Canadians, not just in one sector, but in many sectors, because the issue of consolidation, concentration in Canada is something that we've been talking a lot, but now we're acting decisively and boldly, I would say, to bring more competition. And hopefully even we can have international banners which may want to come to Canada. And I'm going to talk to them and say, listen, Canada's a great place to do business. If we have more people in the market, Canadians will benefit from that.
Second question to Minister Freeland. Historians familiar with the history of Ukraine and the Soviet Union during the Second World War say the fact that so many Canadians do not know much about this history played a role in how Yaroslav Hunka ended up being recognized in the House of Commons last month. You're someone who is familiar with that history. So when the former speaker introduced Yaroslav Hunka as a, quote, Ukrainian-Canadian war veteran from the Second World War who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians, what did you think in that moment?
So I think it's really important to start with the tremendous pain that this brought to so many communities in Canada, starting with the Jewish community in Canada. I actually this morning spoke with a rabbi who serves a synagogue in my own riding, and he talked to me about how painful it was for him and his congregation. And I think that's something that we all need to recognize and be really, really aware of, and listen. I think the second thing that is very important to recognize is this was the sole initiative of the former speaker. He did not inform the government of Canada or the government of Ukraine about what he was going to do. It was a very grave error that was painful for Canadians, painful for communities in Canada. I would say starting with the Jewish community in Canada, and harmful to the brave people of Ukraine. The former speaker has taken responsibility for that very grave error and has stepped down. All of us and our colleagues from other parties and the Senate and Ukrainian officials were all there on the floor. Obviously, none of us understood, none of us recognized what was happening, and that compounds the very grave error, and that makes it really painful for all of us. I see my colleagues here also nodding. No one recognized what was going on. That is terrible, and it is terrible that it happened. And the former speaker, acknowledges his mistake and step down. But I'm just going to conclude by saying that, this is, I think it's incredibly painful for everyone who was in the House at that time. A horrible moment, but it's not about us. For me, the real, the very real pain is that it's really, really hurt so many people in Canada, so many communities, starting with the Jewish community in Canada. That's awful. And it is terrible that this has damaged and harmed the brave people of Ukraine and the Ukrainian president, who we were so proud to welcome.
Alors, c'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse.
This concludes
Tant qu'on
today's
avait,
press
sorry
conference.
for people who could not ask a question.
Thanks to our colleagues as well who were there. Well done. As they step behind that light. Yeah.